Hi, welcome to Neuroscoops, where I take big concepts in neuroscience and scoop them into meaningful, understandable concepts. This process is known as chunking and is highly effective in learning and memory. Today for Neuroscoops, I am talking about the cranial nerves and their functions. Here is a picture of your central nervous system, and here is your peripheral nervous system. Your central nervous system is where your 12 pairs of cranial nerves reside. Let's zoom into the cranial nerves now. Here are your cranial nerves. As I said before, there are 12 pairs. The nerves function as either a sensory nerve, a motor nerve, or both a sensory and a motor nerve. Typically, the cranial nerves are labeled in Roman numerals. Let's go through each one's name and the general function. Here is cranial nerve 1, also known as the olfactory nerve. The general function of this nerve is to smell. This makes this nerve a sensory nerve. This is cranial nerve 2. Also known as the optic nerve. The general function of this nerve is to help you see. This makes this nerve a sensory nerve. I'll go into more detail in a later video, since this is what I currently research. Here is cranial nerve 3, also known as the oculomotor nerve. The general function of this nerve is moving the eyes in different directions, as well as changing the size of the pupil. This makes this nerve a motor nerve. Here is cranial nerve 4, also known as the trochlear nerve. The general function of this nerve is to move the eye down and out. This makes this nerve a motor nerve. This is cranial nerve 5, also known as the trigeminal nerve. The general function of this nerve is to provide sensory information of the face as well as help with chewing and eating. This makes this nerve both a sensory nerve and a motor nerve. Here is cranial nerve 6, also known as the abducens nerve. The general function of this nerve is to abduct the eyes, or in other words, move the eye away from the midline. This makes this nerve a motor nerve. This is cranial nerve 7, also known as the facial nerve. The general function of this nerve is taste for the anterior 2/3 of the tongue, as well as stimulate facial expression muscles. This makes this nerve both a sensory and a motor nerve. Here is cranial nerve 8, also known as the acoustic or the vestibulocochlear nerve. The general function of this nerve is hearing and balance. This makes this nerve a sensory nerve. This is cranial nerve 9, also known as the glossopharyngeal nerve. The general function of this nerve is taste for the posterior or back 1/3 of the tongue, pain within the ear, and other areas of the face, as well as stimulating muscles for speech and swallowing. This makes this nerve both a sensory and motor nerve. Here is cranial nerve 10, also known as the vagus nerve. The general function of this nerve is to carry taste information from the back of the throat and to stimulate the parasympathetic reactions to the heart, lungs, and digestive system. The parasympathetic system, or the rest and digest system, is the counterpart to the sympathetic nervous system, commonly known as the fight or flight response. This makes this nerve both a sensory and motor nerve. This is cranial nerve 11, also known as the spinal accessory nerve. The general function of this nerve is to stimulate muscles to shrug the shoulders and to turn the head from side to side. This makes this nerve a motor nerve. Here is cranial nerve 12, also known as the hypoglossal nerve. The general function of this nerve is to move the tongue and aid in swallowing its speech. This makes this nerve a motor nerve. Whew! That is a lot of information, and that is not even the tip of the iceberg, which shows why a lot of people struggle with the cranial nerves. However, there is no need to fear. I've got mnemonics here to save the day. The first mnemonic is to help remember the names of all the cranial nerves. It goes, "Oh, oh, oh, the time's arrived for all girls. Vote against housework." This stands for olfactory, optic, oculomotor, trochlear, trigeminal, abducens, facial, auditory, glossopharyngeal, vagus, accessory, and hypoglossal. This next one is to help remember the functions of the cranial nerves. It goes, "Some say marry money, but my brother says big brains matter more." The S is for sensory, the M is for motor, and the B is for both sensory and motor. By remembering the functions, this can serve as a memory point in remembering the name and general functions. Lastly, here's my favorite. We have a drawing of all the 12 cranial nerves incorporated into their general place of function. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me on this week's episode of Neuroscoops. Make sure to like and subscribe to Neuroscoops and let me know what neuroscience topic I should cover in my next episode in the comments. Until next time, stay safe and be smart.